This map shows the physical constraints of the Strait of Hormuz. It is 21 miles wide at its narrowest point, and the actual traffic is forced into 2-mile navigable shipping lanes. This map of Middle East oil infrastructure shows that 20 million barrels of crude pass through that narrow gap every day. That accounts for more than a quarter of all seaborne oil trade on the planet. This chart of natural gas flows illustrates the regional dependency. 83% of the liquefied natural gas transiting the strait is bound for Asian economies. These geographical and economic constraints turn this single waterway into the physical jugular vein of the modern global economy. On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched a series of coordinated military strikes against Iranian nuclear and military targets. Iran responded asymmetrically, de facto closing the strait to Western allied shipping. Daily transits plummeted from 138 ships to near zero. This chart tracks the immediate global economic shock. With 130 container ships trapped inside the Persian Gulf, Brent crude prices climbed past $115 a barrel. To address the blockade, Bahrain and several Gulf states drafted a UN Security Council resolution. They wanted to authorize defensive naval escorts to force the shipping lanes back open. Because this disruption threatened 1/5 of the world's energy supply, a unified Security Council response appeared to be the logical path forward. On April 7th, the resolution failed. Despite 11 votes in favor, vetoes from the Russian Federation and China blocked the measure. China's vote created a significant paradox. Beijing is the nation most economically exposed to this blockade, as it imports roughly a third of its oil supply through this specific strait. Ambassador Fu Kong argued that the crisis was a direct result of the initial U.S. and Israeli military operations, framing those strikes as the root cause of the disruption. Beijing maintained that passing the resolution would provide a legal veneer for unauthorized U.S. military expansion in the Middle East. For China, the strategic goal of checking U.S. influence and enforcing non-interference outweighed the immediate economic pressure of an oil shortage. Russia's justification, delivered by Ambassador Vasily Nebenzia, focused on the legal precedent of foreign naval intervention. Moscow claimed that authorizing foreign navies to escort commercial vessels would internationalize territorial waters under the guise of maritime security. This map shows the broader implications for Russia. If foreign navies can be authorized to operate here, they could eventually challenge Russia's own restrictions in the Black Sea and the Northern Sea route. In this diplomatic environment, international maritime law serves as a legal mechanism for superpowers to protect their regional influence and territorial ambitions. Following the UN deadlock, President Donald Trump bypassed the Security Council, issuing a series of ultimatums. These threats of military strikes eventually led to a fragile 2-week ceasefire. However, in the legal vacuum left by the UN's paralysis, Iran established what shipping analysts now call the Hormuz toll booth. Commercial ships are diverted into Iranian waters near Larak Island, vetted by the IRGC, and forced to pay multi-million-dollar reconstruction tolls to proceed. The traditional right of freedom of navigation has effectively been replaced by a system where a coastal state charges for passage. For decades, the global maritime order relied on the assumption of unified, UN-guaranteed freedom of navigation. The modern supply chain depends on these specific shipping lanes remaining open and accessible to all nations. But the Russian and Chinese vetoes signal that the UN Security Council is no longer functioning as the final guarantor of safe seas. The 2026 deadlock at Hormuz suggests that in the world's most critical choke points, the right of passage is becoming a transactional asset used for geopolitical leverage.